This is BBC News. These are the latest headlines here in the UK and around the world. Search and rescue operations are underway in eastern Ukraine after Russian missile strikes killed 25 people, including 2 children. Thousands of teenage students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are getting their GCSE exam results today. The pass rate has fallen since 2021, but it remains higher than 2019. The investigation into the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel in Liverpool continues. Police are questioning a former drug dealer who was the intended target of the attack. The former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan is granted bail after appearing in court on terrorism charges. The UK's former ambassador to Myanmar, Vicky Bowman, has been arrested in the main city, Yangon. Sources have told the BBC that Ms Bowman and her husband are being held on an immigration charge. Coming up this hour, the 17-year-old solo pilot who's broken 2 world records. Hello and welcome if you're watching here in the UK or around the world. 25 people, including 2 children, are now known to have been killed in a Russian airstrike in eastern Ukraine. That's according to the authorities in Kiev. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said that a railway station was hit and several houses and cars were destroyed in a series of attacks in the Dnipropetrovsk region. 31 people were also wounded. The strikes came exactly 6 months after Moscow's invasion began. Our correspondent Hugo Bachega has this update from Kiev. Hugo Bachega in Ukraine there. Well, hundreds of thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland have been having a nerve-wracking day. They've been getting their results for the first GCSE exams in 3 years. The pass rate for this year's GCSEs has fallen since the pandemic peak of 2021, but it does remain higher than it was in 2019. Overall, 73.2% of GCSEs were marked at grades 4 or C and above this year. That's down from 77.1% last year. Remember, that was the year in which grades were decided by teachers. Today's figure is still significantly higher than it was in 2019. That was the last year exams were actually physically sat before COVID, when the figure was 67.3%. Results for vocational and technical awards are also being released, although some BTEC pupils could face delays. Well, my colleague Martine Croxall, who got an ovation earlier on, is at Debney High School in Luton. Martine. Thanks so much, Martine, and congratulations to everyone who both sat the exams and who got their results. Whatever those results were, it is just a triumph to do those exams. The most resilient generation, as one of Martine's guests said. Well, let's carry on the conversation because I'm joined by Stephen Munday, President of the Chartered College of Teaching. Mr. Munday, thank you so much for joining us. Did a return to exams mean a return to normal for this generation? Stephen Munday, thank you so much for joining us. The United Nations Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet has been making her final address before she finishes her 4-year term at the end of the month. Her successor hasn't yet been announced. Ms. Bachelet is still aiming to release a long-anticipated report on the Chinese region of Xinjiang in the coming days and has called also on President Putin to halt attacks on Ukraine. Michelle Bachelet from the UN. A gunman who shot dead a 9-year-old girl in her own home in Liverpool is being hunted by police this morning. Olivia Pratt-Korbel was killed on Monday night when a convicted drug dealer barged into her house whilst trying to escape a gunman who continued firing into the property. His original target, Joseph Nee, is now under arrest in hospital, but the killer is yet to be caught. Well, our correspondent Thomas Morgan has the latest on the investigation. Thomas Morgan in Liverpool, thank you so much. The former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has appeared at a court in the capital, Islamabad, to face terrorism charges. He was given interim bail until the 1st of September. The cricketer turned politician has been charged under the country's stringent anti-terrorism laws after he condemned Islamabad's chief of police and a female judge for the detention and alleged torture of his close political aide Shahbaz Gill. Large crowds of his supporters, as you can see, gathered near the courthouse and security was tight around the complex. Our correspondent Farhad Javed has the latest from Islamabad. Farhad Javed there. Well, there are warnings that Europe could be facing 5 to 10 difficult winters ahead with soaring energy costs and harsh economic conditions. Governments on the continent are under pressure to support their citizens. Billions are being spent to shield the most vulnerable. Our Europe correspondent Jessica Parker reports from Belgium. Well, more ideas are being put forward to help protect homes and businesses from those soaring energy bills here in the UK. The British Chambers of Commerce is calling for COVID-style emergency grants to protect livelihoods. Separately, a think tank focused on low and middle-income earners has outlined a plan to cut bills by almost a third. Senior ministers have already held talks about a £100 billion proposal to freeze prices for 2 years. A new domestic energy price cap for England, Scotland and Wales will be announced tomorrow. Well, I'm joined now by the owner of the manufacturing businesses Jag Design, Gary Thompson. Hi, Gary. How are energy costs for you?
So that's what we're looking at doing.
Gary Thompson, thanks so much for joining us.
Quite welcome. Good to see you.
British Gas is to donate 10% of its profits to help customers cope with those soaring bills for the duration of the energy crisis. The company's owner, Centrica, says £12 million will go into an existing support fund, trebling help available this winter for the poorest customers. The firm, which has seen huge profits this year, said thousands of households would get grants of between £250 and £750. This, though, is a fraction of the support needed to tackle the crisis nationally. Earlier this week, one energy company boss put that total closer to £100 billion. The police chief, who was widely criticised for his handling of a school shooting in the US state of Texas, has been dismissed from his job. The school board in the town of Uvalde in Texas, where 19 children and 2 teachers were murdered, voted unanimously to fire Pete Arredondo, who'd been on administrative leave since the shooting 3 months ago. Our North America correspondent Peter Bowes reports. Staying in the United States, a jury has ordered Los Angeles County to pay damages of $16 million to Vanessa Bryant, who's the widow of the basketball star Kobe Bryant, over graphic photos taken by first responders to the helicopter crash that killed Kobe Bryant and their daughter in 2020. Sheriff's deputies and firefighters on the scene had taken pictures of the wreckage, including the remains of the LA Lakers player and the couple's 13-year-old daughter. With more, here's Gareth Barlow. Well, let's return to the GCSE exam results for 15-16-year-olds here in England, Wales and Northern Ireland for thousands of teenagers today. A really nerve-wracking day. We all remember it. They're the first group to have sat GCSE exams since 2019 after 2 long years of cancellations because of the pandemic. The pass rate has fallen since 2021, but it remains higher than 2019. Well, let's unpick it with our education correspondent, Sean Dilly. Take us through what you notice.
I certainly will do. I'm just thinking as well, you know, so many people have already been to schools.
Sean Dilly, our education correspondent, thank you so much for joining us. This is James Reynolds with BBC News. Well, we just want to take you to a shot in Liverpool, where we are expecting in the next few minutes a news conference by Merseyside Police with an update on their investigation into the killing of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell. As soon as that news conference starts, we will bring it to you. In the meantime, on to other news. The way in which Google calculates the climate impact of your flights has changed. Your flights now appear to have much less impact on the environment than they did before. That's because the world's biggest search engine has taken a key driver of global warming out of its online carbon flight calculator. I'm joined now by Dr. Doug Parr, the Chief Scientist and Policy Director at Greenpeace UK. What do you make, Dr. Parr, of the recalculation? Dr. Doug Parr from Greenpeace, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
In China, a record-breaking heat wave is threatening harvests and forcing the authorities to cut energy supplies to businesses. Demand for electricity is soaring. Historically low rainfall has left rivers and lakes running low, reducing hydroelectric production and triggering 4 government departments to issue joint warnings. Richard Forrest reports. Operations have started in Lebanon to recover the bodies of dozens of migrants still missing after their boat capsized in April this year. At least 30 people are still unaccounted for. Now, thanks to a submarine paid for by the Lebanese diaspora in Australia, families are hoping to finally give their loved ones a proper burial. Lena Sinjab reports. Well, in the United States, in Texas, a massive cleanup operation is underway after severe storms battered the Dallas-Fort Worth area of the state. The city saw the second highest amount of rainfall in a 24-hour period ever. At least one person was killed when their car was washed away. Wendy Urquhart reports. Now, when Anousheh Ashouri was serving 5 years in an Iranian prison on trumped-up charges, he promised himself that if he ever got back home here to the UK, he would run the London Marathon. Back in March, he was released at the same time as Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. It didn't take him long to keep the promise to pull on his running shoes. Celestina Ololude went to meet Anousheh and his family at home. An ex-prisoner turned marathon runner. If that doesn't make you feel you'd better do better, this story will. A 17-year-old Belgian-British boy has become the youngest person to fly around the world solo in a small plane. Mac Rutherford took off from the Bulgarian capital Sofia in March and landed there again on Wednesday. Akiba Koye reports. What do you do after flying around the world? Some GCSEs. Now, a Ford Escort driven by the late Princess Diana is due to go up for auction this weekend. The car was driven by the Princess for 3 years in the late 1980s. It's thought to be the only model made in black, usually painted white. Auctioneers say the Royal Protection Officers requested black for discretion. It's expected to fetch at least £100,000. Let the bids begin. More on our website, but for now, from me, goodbye.
Hello, this is our latest extended look around the world of weather. We'll kick off things